Hey everyone, Catch 'em All Collectibles here. In today's video, I'm going to discuss whether or not CGC is grading easier. For most people, it's long been confirmed without any data that CGC is grading drastically easier since the pop report came out on 4-6. I'm going to follow up on a video from a couple months ago where I said I would look at the data once it was in. And in my mind, we've gotten enough data to have a statistically reasonable basis for making a conclusion. But as we'll get into in the following video here, it's never so simple. It's not going to be so simple here. Most people will have already clicked off the video by the time I'm done explaining the kind of opening introduction that their preconceived notions will be confirmed and they'll be on to the next video and it won't matter. But please stick around for all the data. Like, subscribe if you like this kind of content. Let me know in the comments below if this surprised you in any way, if it confirmed or debunked any preconceived notions you had, any bias you may have had. Anyways, here's the data. Check out my video from a couple months ago. I'll try to link them down in the description for like a basis to this, and so you can get familiar with what these charts are. But anyways, quick overview. Through 4-6, the data is as follows. CGC was grading perfect 10s on 0.12% of cards, 0.93 on CGC 10, 15.22% of cards were getting CGC 9.5, and on down since 4-6. So I took the entire pop report, subtracted off what was already there from April 6th, and this is just the new cards alone. All charts that you see today will be split the same way. Pre 4-6 and then since 4-6. So not like the entire pop report, just the subtraction so that we get new data only. And then since 4-6, we see a pretty drastic increase, nearly 8 times on the perfect 10 rate, nearly 6 times on the 10 rate, and then higher on the 9.5 rate, lower on 9 on down, generally speaking, because those were presumably just shifted up. It's kind of been the narrative. But yeah, with the data, I'll kind of describe that may or may not be the case. We really might not know still. People love to watch videos and not be told one thing definitive one way or the other. I found that that's what YouTube really tends to like. So I'm providing you with a video of that nature. So yeah, just for context, I think, as I mentioned, I wanted to get a good pool of data, not just go off of a few thousand cards. Since April 6th, CGC's graded 201,000 cards. Pretty substantial data pool to work with. And that is over 1.5 million cards they've graded in total. So 200,000 on the 1.3 they had done prior. We increased the pop report by about 15%. Pretty reasonable data set to work with. I think we can use this as fairly representative. The longer you go, the better, but we don't really want to wait a year to try to figure this out. So here I am. Yeah, just a couple notable things to point out before we get further. The average grade before April 6th was an 8.49 at CGC, and the average grade since is an 8.65. It's higher. Objectively, the average grade is higher since April 6th. The questions I have, though, and I guess the statement I make, this is not the whole story. Are we comparing apples to apples? 2 parts. Have people sent the same cards? And I guess subset of that, not only have people sent the same cards, meaning like, are they sending the same physical cards from the same sets? But the second part of that, are they sending the same condition cards? So that's what we would need for an apples to apples comparison. For context too, I did provide PSA grades Pokemon cards with an average of 8.83 and with a 37% PSA 10 rate and about a 36% PSA 9 rate. So PSA grades easier on average than CGC. That was mentioned in a video about 2 months ago. I'll try to remember to link it in the description. The reason we're on row 281 is because all that data is actually up here from the prior video. But yeah, anyways, that's where we are. lost. That's where we are. If you look at this data alone, and if you don't dive deeper, it feels like, yeah, I mean, 10s went up, 9.5s went up, everything else went down. They just shifted everything. They changed their scales. But what I tried to do to target as unbiased of a sample as possible, same thing I did with PSA, let's look at cards that people would have indiscriminately sent, regardless of condition, ideally in the same condition pre-April 6th and post-April 6th. And not only that, ideally we get a big enough sample size pre-April 6th and post-April 6th to work with the data and kind of make conclusions from it. So one of the first cards that came to mind, Japanese promo, Illustrator Charizard. So since April 6th, they've increased the pop of this card alone by 40%. 2,405 new Illustrator Charizards have been graded since April 6th. Pretty decent size data pool. Perfect 10 rate, 0.06% to 0.08%. Went up by about 25%, 33%, I guess, a third. 10 rate did about double. That feels fairly substantial. 9 rate went up about 50%. 9.5 rate, sorry. 9, 8.5 on down, pretty much all dropped. I guess the 8 rate actually went up slightly. But here, we're not seeing anything nearly as drastic as an 8 times perfect 10 rate or a 5 times 10 rate. But we are seeing doubling and 30% or so higher. I don't have the numbers over here, but yeah, this is 9.5s and 9s as far as the colorations goes. The colors lined up, so like the yellow is the same grade on both, the green is the same grade on both. So there's a difference here, but were people sending higher condition ones? Me personally, anecdotally, all I can provide is my own experience. Illustrator Charizards are pretty clean. I bought a couple hundred of them. I haven't sent any since April 6th, but if I had 100 more of them, I would just blindly send them the same way I did pre-April 6th. So to me, pretty close to apples. Feels like we're grading a little bit easier, but nowhere near as drastic as this. Next card that came to mind is Base Unlimited Charizard. It's been worth grading in any condition for quite a long time. I guess at least the past year or so when prices have gone nuts. So in my mind, it's probably nearly an apples to apples comparison, but like pre-April 6th, there was no perfect 10s, no 10s. It's not like we magically got any new 10s or perfect 10s. We did, however, see about a 7 times increase in 9.5s. Base Unlimited is a product that's constantly being broken, and the diversity of grades in this sample set, we've increased the pop by 12%, which is 634 cards. Pretty small sample size. If someone sent a handful of mint ones that got these 9.5s, that could fairly drastically alter the results. So I'm not thrilled with the data set size, but I just wanted to show because Base Unlimited Charizard is way more fleshed out in the entire scale than something like the Illustrator Charizard or the other examples that I chose. So overall, I guess this is 7. So this is CGC 7.5. The 7.5s line up pretty well. The 8s, I guess they're dragged up a little bit. Overall, feels like, again, maybe the same thing. Maybe they're grading a little bit easier. It's hard to say definitively, but in no way is it this drastic. The last thing I looked at, instead of a single card, I looked at an entire set. I wanted to look at something that was like really towards the high end condition wise, so that we could get a red area that existed, or that was bigger than 0.1%, so that we could actually work with something. So VMAX Climax. Anyone who's unfamiliar, this set had a massive reprint recently. Boxes are about $50. Very accessible product, very popular product. A lot of people are cracking it. Interesting here too, because it came out in late December. Not many cards had worked their way through CGC yet on April 6th. I mean, thousands, but not as many proportionally as the earlier ones had. So Anyways, since 4-6, we have a really good data set. We've increased the pop by 5,579 across all of VMAX Climax, which is representative of a 240% increase over what had originally been graded on April 6th. So we've got a good, like we've nearly tripled. I mean, we've more than tripled our data pool of cards graded from VMAX Climax. And what we see again, perfect 10 rate went up. 10 rate went up, 9.5 on down went lower. So averages are higher, 10 rates are higher. I would guess, I've never graded a VMAX Climax card. I actually just recently opened a box because I bought like 100 of them. I'm probably going to grade some. Largely, I think what people do when they open Japanese modern product, they just fairly blindly send it. So this is probably, again, fairly close to apples, more along the lines of the Illustrator Charizard than the base unlimited Charizard, where we could have had a small pool of 10 or 20 really mint copies, really skew the data. But here, what people were sending pre-April 6th should have largely been similar condition to what people have been sending since. I mentioned the 2 points here. Have people sent the same cards? We controlled for that by picking off one promo, by picking off one set card, by picking off one set. So we controlled for our people sending the same cards by just looking at one set or one single card. So we've controlled for that potential bias. Have people sent the same condition cards? We have no way of controlling for that. We have no way of really knowing that. So the best way I attempted to control for it was to choose things that are always worth grading in any condition. That's the best I can do. If you have any suggestions in the comments below, I can definitely make a follow-up video. If you want me to look at a different set, if you want me to look at like EX era, ultra rares, if you want me to look at cards like this, very, very hard to do because the data pool is going to be so small. And after getting beat down with a lot of 8.5s, people largely might have stopped sending them to CGC. One follow-up video I will do, I have probably 500 cards in CGC slabs between a 7.5 and a 9.5 grade that I intend to crack. Some are going to crack and go to PSA. Some are going to crack and go to CGC though. It'll only be an anecdotal data point, but it'll be somewhere between 50 and 100 cards at least that go to CGC. I will provide, these were the grades before, these were the grades after, for whatever it may be worth. I think that'll be an interesting video. But again, all we can do is really work in anecdotes, where I like to have supporting data of large data sets. And what larger data set do we have? There isn't one than the entire pop report, or the entire pop report for a single set. So hopefully this was interesting to you. I think it's the best I can do with the data that we have. Summing everything up, CGC, it feels, is grading slightly easier, but the wrenches that we have thrown in there, and I'll provide, I try to, like, I know people like to watch a video and say, here's are the 5 things you invest in. This is the way the world works. And like, it's just a fact. I don't really work in, people like to say that they know and pretend that they know many times, but I'll just show you the data and see let you know what it says to me and what I'm going to do with it. But anecdotally, I've not been sending the same cards. Anecdotally, pre-April 6th, more specifically, like during 2021 and 2020, I was sending everything. I chucked over 10,000 cards. I closed my eyes and I just scooped up 10,000 cards and sent them to my middleman to go to PSA. I closed my eyes. I scooped up 5,000 cards. I sent them to my middleman to go to CGC. I sent everything. I wish I had sent everything, because I wasn't really punished for it. Different video for a different time. I think people largely overvalue slabs, and I think people pay for 2 like really cheap, accessible mint cards in a slab. They just pay a premium for no reason. Different video, probably be a pretty ranty one. I wasn't as punished as I should have been for all my CGC 8.5s, watching on hollows. But anecdotally, again, I didn't pre-grade at all. I sent everything. Of my 5,000 cards I sent to CGC, 5,000 plus, half of them probably were non-hollow commons and uncommons from base set unlimited, through Neo Destiny. I think I said Neo Discovery Revelation. I definitely sent thousands of non-holo commons and uncommons first edition from those sets. WotC got destroyed with 8.5s. I'll never send those cards again. So anecdotally, disproportionately, I am now pre-grading and I'm sending more Japanese and I'm sending more ultra modern promos and I'm sending them cautiously in a way, smaller volume, looking closer. So a lot of this is due to people like me sending entirely different things or sending the same things that they just look at more closely. So yeah, all I can really do is provide my anecdotal experience and then provide you the data. I think people want this to show, yeah, free tendies, send to CGC, all you're going to get are 10s. Context, PSA gives 37% of cards PSA 10. Even with this newer, easier grading standards, CGC is still only giving about 6% of cards. What is this? 6.31% of cards at 10. About 1% of those are perfect 10. I've seen some crazy statements. The floodgates are open to CGC now. Everyone who quit them before is now sending to them because they grade 10s easier than PSA and all this and that. They still grade way harder than PSA. Their average, their new average is 8.65. PSA's average is 8.83. And if you go card for card, I could do the whole breakdown again. I did actually do it. I forgot to mention that for VMAX Climax. So for VMAX Climax, 48% of cards are getting 9.5s, 43% are getting 10s or perfect 10s. At PSA, 88.36% of cards have gotten 10s. And then the rest are 9s, maybe a couple that had creases or something below. So CGC is likely grading a little bit easier because the best apples to apples comparisons I could find showed a little bit of an improvement. But the drastic increases we're seeing in 10 rates and 9.5 rates are minorly due to them grading a little bit easier, in my opinion. This is what the data shows me and my own personal anecdotal experience. The major contributor to the increased 10 rates are people like me that are now opening their eyes and looking at what they're sending and making sure they're sending good cards. Pre-grading. I never really had to do that with PSA. People might not like hearing that, but PSA, I mean, way back when PSA 10s were $20, $30 and 9s were $5, you had to. But for a few years there, I got out of pre-grading and I've got to get back into it now when I work with CGC. So yeah, that's the data. That's my experience. That's my own anecdotal information. I did reach out, shout out again, Pokemetrics. I'll try to link Pokemetrics if I remember. All this data was taken from Pokemetrics. They have a Patreon. Let me show. So for CGC, it's called Pokemetrics EX. You have to be a member of the Patreon to get all the CGC data. But for PSA, I believe that they provide that for free still. You can go by date. Really, really cool. That I couldn't have put this together without Pokemetrics. I pay like $3 a month, I think it is, for access to this. You can see all the cards they've graded by a week, by 5 weeks, by a year. Can't speak well enough to Pokemetrics. I did reach out to Pichu Fan, who runs it, and just to further demonstrate that people are likely not sending the same cards, I want to see like what was the split pre-April 6th. What percent of cards were Japanese and what percent of cards were English? And what has it been since? Has it drastically changed? For me, it's shifting more Japanese. Another thing, it's shifting more modern. Can I separate out by era? WotC versus mid-era versus modern. I'm disproportionately sending more ultra modern English and more Japanese set cards. So, or promos too. So if I could find that data, I could kind of adjust it. I don't know if this is going to make any sense to anyone. I'll probably describe it poorly, but if I were to find the distribution pre-April 6th on what cards were sent by era and by language, I could almost calculate an expected, given the new distributions of cards being submitted since April 6th, I could calculate what the expected grade distribution would be, and I could see how far off the actual grade distribution is from the expected. So I have reached out to Pichu Fan. If I can get that data quickly or easily, or maybe I'll just make the time to do it in the coming weeks or month. Shout out Patreon. A lot of this was shown in greater depth in Patreon, potentially next month for July. It's my month again. It's been since September of 2021 that I did a lot of this information on not the CGC pop report because it didn't exist, but some of this deeper dive into the pop reports and that I might revisit that. And then some print run data too. But yeah, that's what we've got. If you've got any questions or suggestions, if you've got any interesting commentary to add, let me know in the comments below. As always, like, subscribe if you like the content and want to see more. eBay affiliate links always there. Patreon, find me, Pokenomics Patreon. This Sunday, 2 days from when this goes live, 8 p.m. Eastern, we're having Rusty on from TCA Gaming. Q&A, all that stuff in a live Zoom call. And then Pokemetrics on Patreon as well. That's where I get all this data, instrumental to putting all this together. I couldn't do it without it. So yeah. Happy Friday, everyone. I hope you all have a great weekend. I appreciate you all watching, and I will catch you all later.